Fantasy Rap
with Austin and Ozzy.
Oh, I just love those boys.
Hey everyone, this is Fantasy Rap, and I'm your host Ozzy.
And I'm your co-host Austin.
You can find us on fantasyrap.com. That is fantasywrap.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to the follow-up to week 8 of the fantasy season. And first we're going to talk about how we did. I had a pretty good week. I went 2-1. Important win in my 30-year plus league. Held on, made a mistake and listened to my site that tells me who to play and who not to play. And I played Adam Thielen instead of CeeDee Lamb.
Oof.
And held on to win by like 12, luckily, because he had Devontae Adams, who didn't do anything last night.
Yeah.
And then we get to our Dynasty League, and Austin's in it, and Isaac's in it. And I texted Isaac yesterday and was telling Austin just a couple seconds ago, I had the second highest score, 202 points. Just over 202 points, and lost to the top score at 205 points. So this top guy is now 7-1, and I fell to 6-2, which, you know, we're still quite a ways ahead of the other teams. Yeah. But still, it's like I throw up 202 points and lose.
Yeah, like I said, I feel your pain. We were just talking before. I've been in the same situation so far in the redraft league, which is like, you know, what I hold in higher regard over the other two, just because of the time invested that I have, you know, the equity I have into it. And this season I'm in 11th. You know, if you just took a quick look at my
out of 10 teams, that's how bad he is.
Yeah. You know, if you just take face value, you just look at my team and what they aren't doing this season, you'd be like, this guy's, you know, decent roster. Got to be, you know, middle to top of the league. Yeah, I'm like 5th in points scored, but I'm in
11th place.
2 and 6,
wow.
And in 11th place. So I'm hoping. Luckily, everybody else that's 7th place or lower, we're all one game apart.
Yeah. And
with me having more points and stuff, if I can maybe get lucky, I've been having just the worst luck. We were just talking. I just had my buddy BJ, who's my rival in that league, had his best game this season, and last week, same with Wyatt, put up his best game against me, and I put up 136 last week and 125 this week, you know, good scores in that league, and just getting the wrong matchups at the wrong time.
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
It's the way she goes. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in our CBS league, it always comes back after the game is over, and it says, you know, this the person that you played against would be X if they played you every week, and they would be something else if they played the same schedule you play. And it's funny how those teams would be less than what they've got.
Yep.
If they played the same schedule as me. So, you know, I've had a tough schedule and I'm still 5-3 and lead my division.
Yep.
But, you know, it's all dependent on who you play, which week. This is going to be a potential horrible week for me, as CMC is out in all 3 of my leagues.
Yeah.
So, you know, it just depends. What do they say? Any given Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I was so unlucky this week too that even I had DeAndre Hopkins on my bench.
Yep.
Because the process was Will Levis and Malik Willis, both of them could play.
Right.
Never in a million years would I start him. So I had,
but the funny thing is,
he's the number one.
Right, he is, but he only had 4 catches.
Yeah, I know. But it was just a crazy game for him. But
yeah,
you know, so even getting, I think he scored 36.8 in our league, I still would have lost.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so that's how, like I said, that's just been my luck so far.
Yep. Happens.
Yep.
So let's move on to our injuries. We've got Damian Williams with a foot injury day to day. Not someone I would...
Forgot, where is he?
I forgot where he went to. We talked about him just the other day, a week or two ago. and I'm drawing a blank on where that is. He was the backup. Yeah. Next up, Drake London with a groin injury day to day. I don't know if that's I don't, even in my 16-team league, I don't think Drake London sees the field much for our fantasy teams.
Starting lineup.
So not a big deal. Next up, and I'm sure you guys are all holding your breath on this one, it's Tegan Quitoriano, groin injury day to day. He's a tight end for someone. Next up
moving on.
is Matt Stafford, who has an issue with his throwing, a thumb on the throwing hand, and coach was actually thinking, McVay was thinking he was going to go back in, and then the medical staff told him, no, too much, too big of an injury, he can't go back in.
Yeah, sounds like he's having a problem gripping the ball.
Right.
And last I heard, they were not going to rule out IR.
Okay.
For a little 4 week
Stint
siesta
there.
for Matt Stafford.
So if he doesn't play, and I don't know if this is a plus or a minus. I'm guessing it's a big minus for some of the receivers in LA.
Yep.
Is Brett Rippon. Already, Cooper Kupp was not doing well the last couple of weeks.
Nope.
Puka Nacua has a designation on him, but he didn't. He didn't leave the game, so it could impact, next week this coming week, etc. Then the bad one, Kirk Cousins pulled an Aaron Rodgers and tore his Achilles. He is on IR, out for the season. So this week it'll probably be Jaron Hall, but the Vikings made a trade today for Josh Dobbs. So Josh Dobbs was not bad in Arizona. People are going to say, but they benched him. Well, no, they benched him because they expected that they were going to trade him, benched him for this coming week.
Yes.
Because they probably figured, they had probably already been approached by Minnesota about trading for him.
Yep.
So he's going to go to a place with a lousy offensive line, so-so receivers, and he's going to go to one of the best lines in football. He's going to go to JJ and Addison and Hawkinson. So if you've got Josh Dobbs, I would say it's a huge uptick for him. If you don't have Josh Dobbs and he's available I'd say still in deeper leagues, he's someone that I would put out there for waiver wire fodder and try and get him.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, he's been, Hollywood Brown has been fantasy relevant. Zach Ertz before he got injured.
Trey McBride had a huge week.
I mean, Ertz was getting like 10 targets a game, so Dobbs wasn't bad. He wasn't otherworldly,
right.
But, I mean.
Yeah, but he came in, how long ago did they trade for him?
The Cardinals?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't.
Was it right before? I don't think it was it right before the season started?
I honestly have
and he came in and learned the playbook. I mean, it's not like he's been in the system for a long time. And just like, going to Minnesota, he's not going to know the system, but he seems very intelligent and able to pick that up very quickly.
Yeah, I mean, he's not gonna. Minnesota's come out and said that he's not gonna play this week. Obviously,
that's what I kind of figured.
Yeah, so they get the rookie out there, kind of see if the rookie's got any juice, and just kind of feel it out past then. And I think Dobbs is. If you're, I don't know for sure if there's any of the big quarterbacks yet for bye weeks. I would assume so, like Bills and stuff like so Josh Allen and stuff. I mean, he could be somebody you stash on your bench for a bye week, especially with Jefferson coming back potentially.
Well, and depending
next week, I think potentially
this week or next week. I thought
so.
It's so. Here's my thought. I mean, depending upon who you've got, how deep your league is, who you've got as your starting quarterback, Josh Dobbs might be an upgrade. If you're in a 16-team league, Josh Dobbs could easily be an upgrade over whoever you have. If you
Well, yeah, super flex, 2 quarterbacks.
Right.
League. I mean, he'd be, if you have your second option is kind of ho-hum, he could come in and boost that, from that super flex spot.
Absolutely. Yep. Moving on, we've got Devontae Parker. Head injury. I'm not sure if it was a concussion or not.
I'm
it's
sure
kind
he
of
probably
unknown.
got checked out, but yeah, I haven't heard anything about Devontae Parker.
Yep. Next is Kendrick Bourne, torn ACL, more than likely out for the season, or at least they were looking at whether or not it was a torn ACL.
Yeah, that one kind of sucks because he'd been having some decent weeks. I mean, he was, flex worthy on a bye week, or just flex worthy in general. I mean,
Right.
he caught a couple touchdowns and was getting quite a few targets. Juju Smith-Schuster finally saw the field again once those guys went out, and then I think he caught a touchdown. That might have been his only catch. But, Demario Douglas this week had 70. He was out on the field for 77% of snaps or something like that. So he's somebody that, in place of Bourne, if you need somebody, might be worth a look at.
Their offense is pretty bad.
I mean, about the only one you'd want would be, Ramondre, and even then he's been in a pretty even timeshare with Ezekiel Elliott.
Yeah, I was kind of hoping. I mean, I've got Ramondre in 2 of my leagues, and I was kind of hoping that Zeke would get traded somewhere.
Yeah.
To open up, more opportunities for Ramondre, and it never happened. Next, we've got Tyrod Taylor, who is week to week with ribs. This one's interesting because it sounds like if Tyrod can't play, then it's going to be Daniel Jones.
Yeah, he got cleared for contact.
So it may be Daniel Jones. If neither of them can go, it's Tommy DeVito, and I don't think that that's necessarily who you'd want to go get.
Well, I wouldn't get him. I mean, all it does is ensure that Saquon's going to have 36 carries again this week.
Right.
That was an insane workload, but
Yeah.
I mean, you had Waller, our next guy Waller,
But back to Tyrod Taylor. I mean, I don't care who you put back there at QB. It's one of those half the time they spend running for their lives because that offensive line is so bad.
Yep.
And I find it interesting that not only did the Giants not trade anyone of note, they also didn't go out and get an offensive lineman.
Yeah.
Which I don't quite understand, especially when one of the teams, and I forget which team it was, actually picked up an old lineman.
I think the Vikings traded a lineman to somebody. I can't remember. Cleveland is the guy's name.
Ezra Cleveland?
Yeah, they traded him somewhere.
Yeah, but then there was another guy
Yeah.
who signed a free agent contract who was available, and I forget where he went to.
Yeah.
But then we've got Darren Waller. Go ahead. You were going to say something.
Oh, yeah, just that hamstring popped up again. Listening to another podcast, the Giants had 7 total passing yards.
That is impressive.
And Darren Waller had 4. So 4 yards, I believe.
Oh, receiving?
Yeah, 4
Nice.
yards receiving.
Nice.
So, I mean, over
So
50% of the offensive yards.
Tyrod had no...
I think that's what I heard, unless that was
Okay.
after Tyrod
I thought
Taylor,
that's after
but
Tyrod left.
I think it was going horrible from the jump for the Giants,
Yeah.
and obviously Saquon. I mean, Saquon had over 100 yards rushing,
Right.
but it took 36 carries to get there.
Yeah.
Waller, the hamstring's been bugging him. He missed some time, or not, maybe not missed some time. I think he missed the game, but it's been lingering all season.
Yeah.
All through last year, I think is when he injured it, and then it's all been all through the summer, a little into preseason, and now it's back again.
Right.
That's a hamstring like that is something you always hear it. You have to take the time to let that heal,
You do.
or else it'll just all it takes is one wrong move, somebody landing on you funny.
Yep. Tweak it a little bit, and then
Yep.
it's back to where it was.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Kenny Pickett. Ribs, unknown how long he'll be out. I don't think they necessarily miss a beat with him out because Mitchell Trubisky knows the offense, can step in and play about as well.
Yeah.
I think they're both interchangeable for the most part.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't watch any of that game, but playing against BJ this week, he had Deontay Johnson on his bench, and he had like 14 or 15 targets. He had like 12. I mean, it was one of those where he had like 11 in the first half, and then they just were like, meh. And they, granted that might have been after the Kenny Pickett. I'm not sure how those targets were divided between the two quarterbacks, but for a guy coming back off of IR for his first week, that's a pretty good. It was good to see that.
Yeah, definitely. Next up, another one of those high-end tight ends, Grant Calcaterra. Concussion in the protocol. To be honest, I do not know who Grant Calcaterra is. So I don't think it's a big deal if he's out. He probably, my guess is he's more of a blocking tight end. Put his head where it shouldn't be. And next up, we've got Curtis Samuel, who hurt his toe. Not sure if it was his big toe or his little toe, but he's day to day. What?
Middle toe.
Middle toe.
Sure.
Yeah, probably pointed right at me right now. Again, a good receiver, but I don't think he's necessarily a top 24 or 32 receiver.
He had some stability there for a little bit. He caught a touchdown like 3 weeks in a row, and they were using him in kind of what they had before, kind of more gadgety, running out of the backfield, kind of stuff like that. So he had a little bit of relevance. I had actually rostered him just for a little bit, just to see, because Dotson, who had a really good week this week, and then McLaurin, both of them weren't really doing much. Obviously, Sam Howell is almost the Eagles' kryptonite.
But he's been up and down.
So up and down. I think it just depends on how his offensive line is feeling that game day, because last week Burrow was on bye. I picked up Sam Howell, and I'm like, all right, sweet, maybe we can get one of these really good games. And he was. And I had like 13 points because every time I'd flip to that game, he's running for his life.
Yeah, and I played Sam Howell in our Dynasty League last week. This week I benched him for C.J. Stroud, and if I play Sam Howell, I blow out the opposing team. So just the way it goes. Next up, Desmond Ridder in the concussion protocol. Taylor Heineke came in. Again, I don't necessarily think that there's a whole lot of difference between the two of them, skill-wise.
Yeah, they just got shellacked by the Titans and the Will Levis explosion that everybody foresaw.
And the funny thing is, and I've got him on the waiver wire only because he had a good game. I don't foresee Will Levis continuing to have games like that.
No.
But we'll talk about it in the studs and duds. But Desmond Ridder, he's interchangeable with Taylor Heineke. So I don't, if you're a Ridder owner and you normally play him, which I hope you don't.
Yeah, please.
Go out and get Heineke, or better yet, go get Josh Dobbs and start playing him instead of Ridder. Like I said, there are quarterbacks that I would start him over.
Yeah.
Kenny Pickett. Desmond Ridder. Those are both guys. If Danny Dimes isn't available, I would start him over Tyrod Taylor.
Yeah.
There's really no reason to have one of those guys necessarily playing instead of.
And Ridder he had looked better. He had looked a lot better over the last couple of weeks. He's the starter in Atlanta. I think. I wouldn't be surprised, and I think there was a couple murmurs about Minnesota reaching out about Heineke after the Kirk Cousins.
Well, apparently they reached out to New Orleans for Jameis.
Ooh, that would be interesting.
And they were going to give a third-round draft pick.
Wow.
And New Orleans turned them down. It was
Maybe
going
some
to
writing
be
on the wall that we might see Jameis. Go the other way with
instead
it.
of Carr.
Yeah.
Instead
I'm
of,
just-
I mean, they
yeah.
didn't they give more money to Taysom Hill?
Yeah.
I mean,
he had a huge
yeah, I just
rushing game from the tight end
and
position.
and there's I still have a problem with that. He's a quarterback.
Yeah.
He needs to stay in the quarterback spot as far as fantasy goes.
Mhm.
He doesn't get to be a tight end
Yeah.
that plays quarterback and running back and whatever else.
Yeah.
Put him at the spot because otherwise call him a running back or a tight end.
Well, yeah, you
Specifically.
get these weeks where Jawan Johnson was back, and he was the actual tight end, their receiving
Right.
option, and Taysom Hill just got he just had one of those stupid Taysom Hill weeks.
Right.
So
Again, I don't know that I necessarily would want him on my team as a tight end, but
yeah,
I mean, I
those
just
huge weeks they
well,
win you weeks, but yeah, he's,
right.
his variance is
It's the 1 point weeks that'll
he's
kill you.
mostly floor with a ridiculous ceiling
Right.
every now and then.
Right,
So.
right. And he actually surpasses the ceiling.
Yeah.
Our studs of the week start with DeAndre Hopkins plus 25.79 points, 4 catches on 6 targets for 128 yards and 3 TDs. Not going to continue.
No, not bad.
I mean, when you turn 4 catches into 3 touchdowns, it's kind of silly.
Well, I didn't see the first one, but it sounds like that first one should have. I think it was the first one should not have counted. Apparently, there was some pretty blatant offensive pass interference
Okay.
on DeAndre Hopkins that wasn't called. So, I mean, granted, he still would have had a monster day, but that one stands and he goes nuclear. So,
Right.
yeah,
But I can't see that. Will Levis to Hopkins being a regular thing, getting
I mean, I think-
big yards and
Yeah.
touchdowns.
I mean, obviously, we saw, because our number 2, stud was Will Levis.
Right.
With the 4 touchdowns. I think him just chucking it is either he's kind of like Jameis, where he doesn't care, he'll just throw it down the field, or the first one was a let's see, and he's trying to feel out.
Maybe.
I mean, granted, it's DeAndre Hopkins, who's a little a little on the he's on the back end of his prime,
But he's still a good
but he's
receiver.
still really good. Not Houston DeAndre Hopkins, but so maybe it was just a feeling out. Can I really trust this guy? Because I mean, obviously Hopkins has been pretty mediocre and then bad, and then he had a good week and then bad, and then now he has this week. So,
Right.
I mean, they got a short week this week. They're playing Pittsburgh Thursday night, and Pittsburgh's defense hasn't. They show up in spots, but as a whole have not been,
Right.
world beaters. I think they just lost to Minka Fitzpatrick too last week or something like that, or he came out of the game. So it'll be interesting to see. But I don't think the yardage will be there, but I think you'll probably see him probably around 8 targets or so.
Which would be surprising because he only had 6.
Yeah.
So then we move on to Will Levis, who was plus 22.53 points, 19 of 29, which is about 60%, for 238 yards and 4 touchdowns. Not overly accurate, but he made the 19 completions work for him.
Yeah, I mean, that last touchdown to Westbrook Akine was a pretty nice throw. He's kind of falling back, and it kind of looked a little Rodgers-esque, where he just kind of flicked it and it right in the basket. So
Right.
I mean, I think he's people dunking on him because he fell in the draft and coming out of Kentucky, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, here's the way I look at it.
Yeah.
Right now, and people are going to say, well, hasn't done it over the past 3 weeks, but Purdy.
Mm-hmm.
Purdy was Mr. Irrelevant last year. Came in, played great football. He lost his left tackle, which is a big reason why the last 3 weeks happened.
Yeah.
I mean, we've seen it in Green Bay. We revolving door or whatever, trying to find that protection. And, without Trent Williams, they need him back.
Mm-hmm.
They need him back. I found it interesting that they go out and get Chase Young, and they didn't take care of their offensive line issues. Now, maybe they think after the bye, Trent Williams will be back.
That I would imagine that would be so.
Their defense just got scarier.
Yeah. I mean, but their defense is. I mean, Burrow came up, played his best game of the season. Granted,
Right.
Burrow looked damn near 100% healthy in that game. I mean, he had that where he somehow wrangled his way out of like 3 different sacks on the same play, and then so Burrow looked really good, which is exciting for him. But Cousins had a decent game against him. Obviously they beat him then,
Right.
And then who'd they lose to the week prior to that? Oh, jeez, why can't I think of it?
I'm drawing a blank, but it was a bunny.
Yeah, it should have been a smash.
Yeah.
49. I can't remember it.
Was it the Jets?
Oh no, Browns beat them.
Browns beat them. Yeah.
With PJ Walker.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and what probably would have done them more good would have been to get a cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
But now they've got a whole bevy.
Reunited the Ohio State DNs.
Yeah.
With Young and Nick Bosa.
Yeah.
Were teammates, and that
And
was a
it's-
scary defense.
Yeah, well, and it's just crazy the depth that they've got on
Mm-hmm.
that defensive line now as far as rushers.
Mm-hmm.
Next, we move on to the aforementioned Sam Howell, plus 20.66, 39 of 52 for 397 yards, 4 touchdowns. We had missed, Will Levis also ran 7 times for 11 yards. 4 touchdowns, 1 interception, 3 rushes for 11 yards. I believe he was the top scoring QB.
Yeah, I think
for
he was
the week.
QB1 this week. And he could have easily went well over 400 yards. McLaurin had, I think at least 2, just straight up drops in that game. So, he could have put up an even bigger stat line. Yardage wise, I don't know if he would have threw another touchdown or not, but like we said, Sam Howell looks amazing one week like this. Like he looked good. He was still running around a little bit because that Eagles D line is pretty nasty when it comes to getting to the quarterback. So I think as it stands right now, if I was Washington, I'd be like, all right. So far, the guy doesn't stop out there. He'll have a bad game, but he's giving you everything he's got.
Right.
And then you go, against the Eagles. Now twice has almost beat the Eagles. I think they need to be looking at finding him protection, like a lot of teams need to do. Getting him, solid protection up front. McLaurin, I don't know where he stands out with his contract, if he's got any years left or how that goes. But you got Jahan Dotson, second-year receiver who popped this week. He's been kind of disappointing for a couple of weeks here.
Right.
Granted, Logan Thomas he's pretty old, and he had that. But he still looks good. He had a good week this week too.
Right.
He threw the ball 52 times.
Well, and the funny
piece of that offense.
The funny thing is, the Commanders decided to go and trade Montez Sweat and Chase Young.
Yeah.
So now they're not going to be getting at the quarterback for the opposing team.
Mm-hmm.
My guess is that the games are going to be even higher scoring against them.
Mm-hmm.
So that tells me that maybe Sam Howell is going to have to throw even more.
60, 65.
Right. A la Tom Brady in some of his games where he throws. But, the difference is that Tom Brady is usually throwing those 5 to 7 yard passes, and Sam Howell is actually moving the ball down the field. I'm not saying Sam Howell's going to end up on here all the time.
Yeah.
I'm saying Sam Howell might be a decent play going forward, depending upon which team they're playing against.
Yeah, and
How
I think
good the defense is.
dynasty wise too. Definitely, definitely be excited to have him. Like I said, if Washington commits and they can, bring in some protection, or through the draft, however, bring in, guys to protect him better.
Well, they picked up a second and third round draft pick for those guys.
There you go. I think their receiving core is really good. They got all the talent there. Thomas, like I said, he's just old, but playing well. So yeah, I like Sam Howell in the future, and I think too, if he's somehow on your waiver wire, you look for a plus matchup if you need it, and you can stream him.
Right, exactly. Next, we have C.D. Lamb, who, like I said, I decided to sit. Compliments of a certain site. Yeah. Plus 18.79. It seemed like everything Dak was throwing was at C.D. Lamb. Yeah, 12 catches on 14 targets, 158 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 rush for 12 yards. It's the C.D. Lamb that you always hope you're going to see. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous numbers.
Yeah, I think he was again, I don't know if it was really that, but it sounded like maybe the wheel was starting to make a little noise there, with just that Dallas offense as a whole. We brought it up last week, you had Mike McCarthy, who, with Kellen Moore, the, highest tempo or whatever that measurement was, to now dead last. And it's been reflecting, whereas Pollard hasn't been, that great over the last handful of weeks. CeeDee Lamb's been, kind of up and down, mostly kind of middle. And finally you have, like I said, there were starting to be some rumblings out there, little squeak, and, this is the result.
Yeah, that doesn't seem to be helping Devontae Adams at all.
No.
So our last
hasn't been dealt, and it sounds like won't, so...
Right. Yeah, that was surprising to me too. Mm-hmm. I really thought that after last night, slamming the helmet down.
Yeah, you gotta force your way out of there.
Yeah, well, he apparently had a talk with management, and they still didn't deal him. Mm-hmm. So maybe he's willing to stay there and keep putting up with stuff. I don't know. Garoppolo didn't do much. We have him on our duds list. Yeah. So let's finish our studs. The other stud that we've got is Rashid Shaheed, plus 17.49. Caught all 3 of his targets for 153 yards and 1 touchdown. Mm-hmm. So 51 yards per catch average. Unsustainable.
Yeah, well, he's been on here maybe 2 other times, I want to say, because this is kind of his stat line where he has only a handful of catches, but it's the big yardage, and then if he houses one, there you go. So he's,
a la Mims.
Yeah, and Derek Carr, you hear listening to like Mic'd Up, and even just seeing it, you can see him on the sideline sitting there with the OC, and he's like, I want to take a shot with Shaheed. And and it's not Chris Olave, which he's killing people.
Yeah, but he's injured.
Yeah. Well,
there
is something. I think there is some tension between him and Derek Carr, whatever it may be. Because Olave had the one that hit him right in the face mask. Yeah. Whether he lost it, and Derek Carr was pissed, and then Derek Carr came out and threw a bad ball, and then Olave was upset at Derek Carr, and it's like, you guys got to figure that out, because Olave's a really good receiver.
Right.
And if you're Derek Carr, you want to start having some really good games here, you got to get on the same page as that guy.
Yeah. So agreed. So moving on to our duds. This one is surprising because
after the monster week he had last week.
Yeah, I can't figure out Kansas City. Mm-hmm. Our first one is Patrick Mahomes, minus 16.26. 24 of 38, 291 yards, 2 interceptions, 1 fumble lost, 3 rushes for 20 yards. No touchdown passes. Those are not good numbers.
No, especially against Denver.
Right. I sat there and I'm like, okay, well, they've got to be coming back. They've got to be coming back. They're not coming back.
Yeah.
It was horrible for them.
I guess I had heard that Mahomes was sick for that game too, or maybe like a stomach bug or something like that.
Okay.
And it was cold and snowy in Denver. I know, but I mean, if you got the flu, would you want to be out in 20-degree weather with 6 inches of snow?
Sure.
I mean, he played.
When I was 26 years old, sure.
Yeah, you're getting paid his money though.
No, I'm saying if I were getting paid his money,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
saying
do
he
whatever
did
it
play.
takes.
But I mean, is this stomach bug Mahomes not being, quote, no pun intended, under the weather, or is this Denver starting to somewhat? I mean, obviously you get blown. You get 70 points hung on you. If that's not a wake up call and they're starting to change some things. I mean,
And they also didn't
playing
trade
a little,
anyone.
that too, which is surprising with all the stuff with Jerry Jeudy. They're saying Surtain was available.
It would have taken a miracle
yeah.
bid for that one.
Yeah, but so like I said, I don't know if maybe this is the very start of. I'm not saying Denver's going to come out and run the table or anything, but they're starting to realize or figure out their personnel. Obviously, Peyton. Everything.
I mean, we've always heard how great of a coach he is.
Mm-hmm.
We were starting to worry about that when they got 70 dropped on him.
Yeah.
But maybe you're right. Maybe it's taking a little bit of time.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure too.
Russell Wilson is playing a million times better than he did last year.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm sure too. Peyton. If it goes back south and they're bad, he's gonna be like, "Oh, this isn't my team. I didn't build this." He's gonna be like a college coach. This isn't my roster. I didn't put this together. But yeah, I mean, Kansas City kind of. I know they've got a lot of money tied up in Patrick and Travis, and whoever else there. It's another team too that you would have thought you would have saw something for a trade for a receiver.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody was kind of linking. From what I heard, was like Mike Evans and them.
Devontae Adams and them.
God, that would be insane,
Wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, that would be insane. I'd be weird. I mean, I feel like it wasn't that weird seeing him in a Raiders jersey, but I think seeing him in that red would be just weird.
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, it was just like I said, weird. I keep throwing out weird, odd that they didn't make any.
Right.
Seem like they haven't made any. You haven't heard any reports that they've been poking around.
Right.
Nothing.
Right.
Just
no.
Rasheed Rice, I guess.
I mean, they're 6-2.
Yeah.
So it certainly isn't necessarily time to panic.
But I mean, Andy Reid's the smart enough guy.
Yeah.
He's got to see. He's got to look at this and be like, all right, Kadarius Toney, bad.
Could have told you that week one.
That was a bad trade on our part.
Yeah, week one when he dropped 5 balls.
Yeah, I mean, they brought back Mecole Hardman.
Fumbled on a punt.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Andy Reid's they're a smart organization and they have, probably the, potential to be the greatest of all time quarterback. And, it's the same that we are always hollering with Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
Get him some help. He's got, granted, Aaron had Devontae, and Mahomes has Kelsey, but
and
we've had some help.
We've had, Green Bay has had plenty of good receivers.
Oh yeah.
They can go down the list for all the we never had a first round draft pick at wide receiver.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, Donald Driver was a great receiver.
Yep. One of my all-time.
Jordy Nelson
players.
was an excellent receiver. Devontae Adams is considered one of the best that's played in probably the past decade or two. Greg Jennings. I mean,
James Jones.
Yeah. I mean, it's not for lack of. I mean, I look at KC and I say, yeah, you've got a young Rashee Rice, but beyond that, you don't really have anything other than your tight end.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's yes. A lot of the younger folks would say it in Green Bay, and I'd sit there and I'd go, he doesn't need a first-round draft pick. And obviously they were good enough because he took half of them with him to the Jets. So if you're going to take Cobb and you're going to take Lazard and you all of these guys with you who weren't good enough for me on the Packers, but they're good enough for you there,
Yeah.
I'm never going to feel sorry for Rodgers
Yeah.
for some of the stuff that gets said about that.
Nope.
Next up, we've got Lamar Jackson, and we talked about that. Lamar scores a couple extra points, and I win my dynasty game. Minus 13.11, 18 of 27, 157 yards and a touchdown, 5 rushes, 17 yards. Just so not Lamar.
Yeah, and that was against Arizona. Great. I mean, he was like everybody's start of the week. I picked him in DraftKings, like pay up for him because this is guaranteed that he's going to be the top, quarterback this week.
Right. And yet, who got all the points?
Well, yeah, it's Gus Edwards. I mean,
2 touchdowns or 3?
3.
3 touchdowns.
Yeah, I mean,
not a lot of yards rushing.
No,
but 3 touchdowns.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns. I mean, I got lucky, and Mark Andrews got into the end zone, for the receiving touchdown. But yeah, I mean, Baltimore, same thing, kind of weird. It seemed like Lamar was looking for OBJ a lot this week. Zay Flowers had a pretty bad week from what I gather.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously only 157 passing yards, and you divide that up between like 4 options. It's not very good.
I think Andrews and the running backs took most of that.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's just kind of weird. I mean, Baltimore, they got to figure out how to get Zay Flowers more involved down the field as well. And, I mean, Lamar,
I don't think Aguilar had anything either.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't even know. Bateman probably caught 1 or 2. But, yeah, I mean, and Lamar, again, should be smart enough, to go, all right, I've got arguably the number 2 tight end in the league with Andrews and young rookie who, can break one at any time. These are the 2 guys I'm going to throw to.
Right.
OBJ, whatever. Rashad Bateman, he can't even stay in the game half the time. He's banged up. Aguilar had like half a good season with was it the Patriots last year or something like that, or 2 years ago, whatever.
Yeah.
Same, yeah. And then plus 2, only 17 yards on those 5 rushes.
Yeah.
That's very unlike Lamar.
Right. Next we move on to Desmond Ridder, who, like we said, got injured. So he only played half a game or so.
Mm-hmm.
Minus 11.48, 8 of 12 passing for 71 yards, 3 rushes, 26 yards. Not a bad start.
No.
Passing is down. Rushing is up for him.
Mm-hmm.
But overall, you get injured and it doesn't help.
Obviously. Yeah, I think he probably could have ended up with a decent stat line, maybe meet projection, because like I said, obviously the Will Levis explosion. They were down and, were needing to make up some ground. And, so there was a potential there if he hadn't have gotten hurt that maybe he could have at least met projection.
Yeah. Well, he wouldn't have been on the list because, he's down 11.48. Next is 11.44 and 11.33. He scores another half a point, and he's above all these other guys. Yeah. So next up was Jimmy G, minus 11.44. You talk about a bad week. 10 of 21. 126 yards and an interception, 2 rushes for 12 yards. He struggled.
Yeah.
First game back from the injury, and missed Devontae over and over.
Mm-hmm.
Devontae had 1 catch for 11 yards, I think it was.
Yeah, something like
However, should have caught the one across the middle.
Mm-hmm.
And he was upset with him, I think, with himself, but he's also upset with get me the ball.
Yeah, there's no reason why those 10 targets shouldn't have all been to Devontae, or at least, 8 to Devontae and 2 to Josh Jacobs.
Of the catches.
Yeah. And Jacobs scored on the ground. Yeah. But,
Jacobs actually looked pretty good this week.
Yeah.
Which was surprising because, like I said last week, I would have expected Jacobs to have a decent game, and they just didn't utilize him at all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like Green Bay and Aaron Jones.
Well, yeah.
So, Jimmy, I can't, that guy, I don't, everybody was all, well, he's a winner in New England, and whenever he plays, he wins, but his stat lines have never been that great. And
he's a winner based on the system he's in.
Well, yeah.
And I think that, first of all, Josh McDaniels' system is...
I think he's going to be, obviously with Devontae staying, I'm sure that, McDaniels will be out the door
Yeah.
pretty quick.
How much does a coach make versus how much
They're paying him.
Devontae makes?
Yeah.
I think, yeah. In fact, maybe that's what part of the discussion was about today. Maybe it's time to move on from the head coach.
Yeah.
Next up, we've got Kenny Pickett, minus 11.33, 10 of 16 for 73 yards, 1 rush for 10 yards, injured partway through the game.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like this is a normal thing for him. So moving on to our waiver wire. Like I said earlier, Will Levis is a decent pickup. I wouldn't get too excited about him because this is one game.
And I mean, for whatever reason, I just have a feeling that they're just, even if Levis, has a good start this, and puts up, a decent stat line, I just have this feeling that they're going to just, Tannehill's back next week, here comes Ryan because he's the vet and he's been with the team, but he is, Tannehill wouldn't have put up that stat line.
No.
There's no way he would have put up that stat line. So, again, like we said, Levis isn't going to put up that again.
No, right.
At least not this season. Maybe in the future if he's given a chance to
19
start,
of 29 for 238 is not great.
No.
The 4 TDs is.
Yes.
I mean, that's what saved that stat line. That's 16 points right there.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, so it could be a 1 week thing here with Levis, and then Tennessee going back to their old ways of mediocrity.
Right. The other one was Josh Dobbs, who I absolutely love going forward. It's funny because where do we see Kirk Cousins finish in a given year?
Like just,
top 10?
Yeah. It was probably usually around 6 to 10, somewhere in there, I would imagine.
I can see Josh Dobbs being 8 through 12
Yeah.
from this point forward,
Mm-hmm.
based on the team that he's on now, based on the tools that he's got to work with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I truly think that he's going to be one of the bigger surprises in the second half of the season.
And like we said too, he's been good. Not like again, not otherworldly, but again, you give him these weapons and that line, and he had an offensive-minded head coach with O'Connell there. There's a reason why I think he might have been the only guy they went after. Potentially, poking around for a trade.
Who?
Josh Dobbs or the Vikings?
No, I told you they offered a third to.
Oh yeah, that's right. Oh yeah, for Jameis.
New Orleans.
Yeah, so never mind. But
that one surprised me because if either one of those guys, I would have loved, and I'm sure, Addison and Jefferson would have loved to have seen Jameis there.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I think Jefferson actually was texting with Winston saying he hoped that he got picked up.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
Minnesota's, they're competing. Right as it stands, right, I think they're like 4-4. But as if the season were to end today, they're in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So they're competitive, and Dobbs is going to come in. Obviously, he's not going to be Kirk Cousins, but he's going to keep them competitive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and they actually won. How many games did they win without Jefferson? At least 2, right?
They haven't won all of them, have they?
I don't think so.
They
weren't 0-4, were they? I don't think so.
No, they were 2-4, I think.
Okay.
Or
I don't know. I don't know how far down they were.
Mm-hmm.
The last one is Rashid Shaheed, who continues to have good weeks.
Mm-hmm.
If he's available, and I'm not saying he's available. The thing that scares me is the 3 targets.
Mm-hmm. That's kind of his stat line.
Right.
If he connects, he's great.
It's like Mims. I don't want Mims on my team because, well, first of all, they're not even using him right now. But when they do, it's feast or famine because he sees the field so seldomly, and then the expectation is that he's either going to catch an 80-yard touchdown or he's not going to catch anything. Mm-hmm. And I can't, I can't deal with that.
Yep.
Sell high. DeAndre Hopkins. If you've got Hopkins and he had that week, get rid of him for as much as you can get for him.
Yeah, I mean, in my position, it's kind of tough because like I've got Diggs and Amari Cooper and Mike Evans, and then Hopkins is my fourth. So.
But you have a flex.
Yes, correct. So it's either Evans or Hopkins, whoever's in the flex. And.
Yeah, but what could you get for him right now?
In that league, like I said, we've been doing it for 14, 15 years now, so everybody's pretty savvy. It's I'm not going to be able to get, they're going to go, oh, well, of course, he's trying to get rid of him after a monster week. And, they're going to see through it. I mean, obviously, if you can, absolutely do it.
Yep.
But I know with my
you could probably trade him for a Tegan Quatoriano.
Oh, for sure.
I mean, what? Or Grant Calcaterra.
Just that's an ad drop transaction.
Oh yeah, never mind.
So no, I agree. I mean, I think he's going to still be up and down. Obviously not this up, but it's tough because that Tennessee offense is just so weird. I mean, Henry went over 100 yards this week, and Spears wasn't bad involved. It seemed like obviously they had the Henry's Derrick Henry recipe game script because they were up so much, but it's just it's so weird.
Yeah, well, and that's the other thing. I mean, if you're up and you've got Derrick Henry, you want to pummel the defense.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
I mean, you aren't going to bring in Spears, who's a littler guy than Henry. You want to punish them so that they can't rush, so that they can't
Mm-hmm.
My second one on the sell high is Trey McBride. Kind of it's hard to say. I mean, if Kyler comes back, maybe Trey holds some value still.
Yeah.
But Trey McBride just had probably the best game he's going to have for this year.
Mm-hmm.
So if you got him and you don't need him, maybe you picked him up for bye week. Well, this past week there were no byes, but you know what I'm saying. I mean, if you picked him up on the trade him. His value probably won't be as high as anywhere down the road as it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, I picked him in the DraftKings lineup because he's super cheap. The matchup was about the worst you could have. I mean, Baltimore's been very good against tight ends, but he was just super cheap, and and he just Ertz going on IR. There was
and you're getting all those targets.
Yeah, there was nobody else there to compete with him.
Right.
So I mean, it paid off. But I mean, he's talented, and they brought him in for they brought him drafted him for a reason, and then obviously then they bring in Ertz, and it was kind of like, but yeah, I mean, I'd probably try and ship him too, especially if you picked him up, and don't need him. You can package him to go get a better piece elsewhere.
Right.
So
Buy low. A couple of guys here, a couple of running backs. Aaron Jones, been injured, hasn't been involved in the offense.
Yeah, I agree. I think LaFleur needs to give up play calling.
Don't disagree.
I think he's a very good head coach, but play calling, we've seen it. He's not good at it.
Well, like I said, to me it's so complex that we waste so much time even getting to the line.
It was the same with Aaron. I mean,
Aaron,
games with you and
Aaron, but Aaron and I started. Aaron did it for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
Aaron wanted to see what that last second motion was by the defense to decide how he was going to play it.
Yeah.
Jordan Love is not doing that. Jordan Love is getting to the line with 6 seconds left, and he's got whatever motion and everything, and deciding who the mic is, and there's just no time. And maybe that will come, but I think the calls are it's too complex of a system for, especially right now. Let's just figure out. Let's do what we need to do. It's like trying to figure out, we figure out at halftime what we haven't been doing right in the first half, and then we finally can make some changes. And I sit there and I go, okay, well, it's 2/3 of the way through the first half, and we still haven't run a quick slant. They've got the middle open, and you aren't even looking for a quick hitter to pick up 6, 7, 8 yards. But we continue to run A.J. Dillon on the outside.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I was kind of disappointed he didn't get moved. There was some talks that
Aaron Jones or A.J. Dillon?
Both of them. I mean, obviously Jones when he's fully healthy is very good. But,
He is.
His problem is his health. And granted they're not using him, but I mean, at the very least, we know A.J. Dillon's not even as the number 2 running back. He'll have an okay game here. He had a decent receiving game this week.
Yeah.
But as a runner, which is crazy because he's built like a brick outhouse.
But again, we have a lousy offensive line. A center who isn't measuring up, should have taken Creed Humphrey. We finally have Elton Jenkins back, and he's playing stellar offense. But we have really not the left tackle that we'd like. Yep. So the blocking isn't there for rushing. I just, I don't know what the solution is. I don't know. You also look at they threw a stat line up there. Do you know that A.J. Dillon is the heaviest of the running backs?
Doesn't surprise me.
He's bigger than Derrick Henry.
Yeah.
By like 4 pounds or something.
Yeah, it honestly doesn't surprise me.
I was surprised.
We saw him at the softball game.
I'm not talking about,
I'm just saying, but like
90% of his weight is in his quads.
You see his quads, but just like I said, seeing him in person at that charity softball game, I was like, everything. He's a lot bigger than he looks on. On TV.
You saw the picture of him standing next to Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones looked like a little kid. It looked like a high school kid who hadn't even come into his own yet. So the other one I would try and go after is Tony Pollard.
Yeah, I tried.
Again, not being utilized. Potential for, and I would have put someone else on here. If Zeke would have been traded, I would have gone after Ramondre.
Oh yeah.
Some of that stuff is based on what happened, but if you can get a Tony Pollard at a reduced rate, at least try.
Yeah.
So let's move on to our loser of the week. I considered putting myself there for playing for sitting CeeDee Lamb.
Well, so CeeDee Lamb had this huge stat line. Adam Thielen still had a pretty good game.
He had an all right game.
He had like 11. PPR he had a good
game.
PPR.
Well, I'm not in PPR.
Well, yeah, true.
but that was PPR.
Okay.
So
yeah,
he was all right.
Game,
I think he had like 17 points.
It wasn't.
He didn't have the 41 that CeeDee Lamb had.
Yes.
And like I said, I went into Sunday night and I had Keenan Allen. And I was only up by like 2. So I went up by like 13 or 14, and I had to hope, and that's PPR, I had to hope that Devontae Adams didn't do anything Monday night. Luckily, Devontae Adams didn't do anything Monday night. But instead, what I did was, in that same league, we had someone play Gerald Everett. And we know that Gerald Everett was, he may have been a game-time decision, but he didn't play. I generally go into a game with a backup pegged. He had no second tight end on his team. I put that on the GM for not having a second tight end on your team when your guy is listed with a designation.
Yeah, if he was available, par him. He got a touchdown.
Right,
that's an easy.
Right, but are you going to
drop?
Are you going to drop Everett?
Yeah.
I probably would have too.
Yeah.
Now it's a little different last week, in one of my leagues. So in all 3 leagues I had CMC a week and a half ago when that was the Monday night game when it was unsure as to whether or not he was going to play. It was looking like he more and more like he would, but in the one league I would have had nothing. In my 30-year league, and I'm not going to drop guys that I keep I couldn't drop anyone because in that league, if they've already played, you can't drop them.
Okay. Yeah.
In my Yahoo League, I could have dropped any of the players, whether they played, whether they were on my bench and had already played. I could pick someone up, and I would have. I would have picked up Mason or and we talked a little bit about that. But that would have been, I mean, a CMC is a different story because I was not going to win the game without CMC.
Yeah.
So no matter who I placed in there, I was going to lose the game. So I needed CMC to play for that for my one league in order to win it. So it's not like I didn't have other running backs. I didn't have anyone I could play on Monday night.
Yeah.
Because I didn't own Mitchell or Mason. I suppose I could have gone out and picked up Juszczyk.
Yeah.
And played him in the event that something happened because Juszczyk was available. But I wasn't going to go 5 running backs deep to make sure that I had someone playing that night. And I would have put myself on loser of the week and said, even though there was no way around it, I could have done something proactively.
Yep.
This guy decided not to do anything proactively. Luckily, he won the week. It was fairly close still, but you, my friend, are our loser of the week.
Yep.
Did you have any losers?
Me?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Not playing. Well, yeah.
Well, like I said, the process for DeAndre Hopkins was correct.
Oh, absolutely.
Will Levis and Malik Willis were going to play according to Mike Vrabel.
Yeah.
No, thank you. I'm not touching any receiving option. The only person I would have ever played, obviously, is Derrick Henry. And if you were forced into playing DeAndre Hopkins, congratulations.
Yeah, in our 30-year plus, I believe he sat on the bench also.
Yeah.
It's again. I mean, we talked about some of these guys: Kendrick Bourne, Devontae Parker, Tegan Quitoriano, Drake London. These guys just even in a 16-team league. You don't see those on a lot of... I mean, I shouldn't say that Drake London isn't on a roster, because he's on a roster, but...
He's just on a bench.
He's a bye-week player at best. He's not one of the top 32. So, it's all dependent on, who some of these people are. And I wouldn't be playing Hopkins over the guys that I've got either.
Yeah.
So, it makes it tough. Well, that's all we've got for this week. Hopefully you find the time to listen to the podcast or check out the YouTube video. Otherwise, I am Ozzy.
And I'm Austin.
Have a great week.
See you.